Today on the Big 6 in 60, the Panthers trade for Brady Tkachuk.
Wow, the Florida Panthers, they did it.
Dusty May heads to the Mavericks.
Dusty May is out. He is leaving for the NBA.
And the Titans make a $100 million deal.
A historic contract for Jeffery Simmons.
This is the Big 6 in 60, the 6 biggest national sports stories from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now. Thank you for making the Big 6 in 60 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Panthers made a blockbuster move for Brady Tkachuk, reuniting him with his brother Matthew in Florida. Armando Velez with Locked On Panthers breaks down the blockbuster move.
Wow, the Florida Panthers, they did it. Another blockbuster for a Tkachuk brother. This time, it was not late at night. This one was a late afternoon trade as the Florida Panthers acquired Brady Tkachuk from the Ottawa Senators. We're going to discuss the terms of the trade. We'll discuss the impact on the top 9 of how it looks like as the Panthers are primed to be one of the best in the NHL. We'll discuss Brady Tkachuk and the fact that he asked out now as opposed to later, that was our expectations more in segment number 2. But now we are going to discuss the fact that Brady Tkachuk is a Florida Panther. And Francisco, when you got the notification which was first reported by Pierre LeBrun of TSN that Brady Tkachuk was coming to Florida, how was your reaction? Because I'm still feeling the adrenaline rush, and we're recording this 4 hours later after the fact. But man, another one. Happy Father's Day to Keith Tkachuk. His sons, both of his children, are playing together.
Yeah, I had a feeling that maybe Bill Zito pulled off the trade officially today just because it's Father's Day. I'm not sure. It might actually be the reason why. But hey, Keith Tkachuk only has to go to one city now.
Yes.
Just to stay in Broward County and see both of his kids play hockey. So, yeah, fantastic for him. Was not expecting to be here whatsoever for the summer. I was just doing full on Marlins stuff right now. I had to throw on a Marlins-centric hockey jersey just to be here. But yeah, completely, out of left field. I didn't really think that this would happen now. There was always the rumors, and there was always, okay, let's see what happens with Ottawa. Maybe he wants to give it another go for another season. They made the playoffs this past season, but it still seemed like I think they just got in by default towards the end, because you would think in another season with a healthy Florida Panthers team, that Ottawa team would not have made the playoffs. And I think Tkachuk may have seen the writing on the wall with regards to maybe the ceiling for the Ottawa Senators as well. He wanted to just go now and have an opportunity to win going forward.
Yeah, and let's not kid ourselves. Brady Tkachuk was not really impactful in that series against the Carolina Hurricanes, but he was impactful in Four Nations. He was impactful for Team USA in the Olympics, scoring multiple goals there. But he's a Florida Panther, and he has a chance to contend for a Stanley Cup. But let's talk about the terms of the trade, as the Florida Panthers traded their 9th overall pick from this year, the one that they got top 10 protected in the trade with the Chicago Blackhawks, and 25th overall in this year's first round. We'll get that a bit later, and then a 2027 second round pick, which is going to be one of their own. We'll discuss one of the other two that they have, and then a top 10 protected 2029 first round pick. So 3 first round picks and a second going for Brady Tkachuk. So you're probably wondering, if you guys are listening, so how did the Panthers get the 25th overall pick? Didn't they only have 1 first round pick in this draft? So Francisco, tell us how we got here.
Yeah, well, as with hockey and the salary cap, and sometimes you just have to let some players go and try and give yourself an opportunity now to win. The Florida Panthers are in win now mode. They took a season off essentially, and a postseason off essentially with the injuries and everything. So this gives the Panthers rest going forward into 2026-27. But the casualty in all of this is Mackie Samoskevich.
Mm-hmm.
So he is gone. He was a Florida Panthers draft pick from 2021. He made his way up to the club in 23-24, was not part of the postseason roster for that cup run, but played his first full NHL season with the team in 24-25 and got his name on the Stanley Cup that time. But this past season, you could see flashes from Mackie Samoskevich. There was always that trouble of him finishing his opportunities when it came to goal scoring. And I think the Florida Panthers may have not wanted to wait that long for him to start developing that part of his game. But you can see it there. You can see the flashes of what he could be potentially in the future. And they got a proven talent in as part of all this with a nice little swing of a trade to the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah. And you turned Mackie Samoskevich into Brady Tkachuk with the trade. And you know what? Mackie Samoskevich, although he was an RFA last year as well and really didn't have any ARB rights there, he had no choice but to take what the Panthers were giving him when he signed the 1 year deal at $775K as the Panthers were re-signing Ekblad, Marchand, and Bennett. So he took a haircut there, and this has a chance for him to be in a no pressure situation in a market like Seattle, where they're still, they're an expansion team. So is Vegas. But they're not that. They are an expansion team as you would expect them, as far as to have some growing pains there. And you know what? This has an opportunity for him to reunite with someone like Matty Beniers, who he played at the University of Michigan. And you know what? He gets to get a little bit of a raise there as well, because I don't know what his contract is going to be when they do sign him, but I was thinking that his ceiling contract was going to be somewhere between 2.5. He could get up to like 3-4 million there now on a bridge deal with the amount of role players that they have there. And you know what? He gets to be in a new situation there. But the upside is the Florida Panthers are getting a proven player in Brady Tkachuk. And I mean, for Florida, putting the two brothers together is just an opportunity that you just flat out can't miss here. And the other pick that they got in the Mackie Samoskevich trade, a conditional second round pick, which is going to be the higher pick of Winnipeg or Columbus come next year. So whoever's finishes higher, that'll be the Florida Panthers pick. The lower of the picks, it's going to actually go to Toronto Maple Leafs in that. So Seattle's going to lose 2 second round picks either way there in some trades that they did. But it just really comes down to profile, which Mackie Samoskevich, he's a speedster, he's a shooter, while Brady Tkachuk fits the Florida Panthers mold as the pressure that they put in the offensive zone, forechecking, which Brady Tkachuk, better skater than Matthew. Matthew has a better hockey IQ, in my opinion, but more aggressive when it comes to separating the puck there, which I think this fits perfectly for the Panthers.
Yeah, and if you look at his shot map, right around that grimy area, right in front of the net there, in front of the crease, so he's going to get you a lot of those types of goals as well. So Mackie Samoskevich is the speedster trying to create some space and try and kind of blow past it to score a goal, but as we saw, he was snake bitten a lot of those times, and he always had these great opportunities like, oh man, if you could just find a way to finish. Whereas with Brady Tkachuk, you got a much heavier game in that sense, and you're going to get the tip ins, those really lunch pail type of goals. So I think that once again, that's how the Florida Panthers won their 2 Stanley Cup championships, and you could see it. Look, the Carolina Hurricanes just won the cup. After having all of their boogeyman go away with the Lightning, the Panthers, and the Bruins, all those teams were gone, and they, destroyed the door that was in front of them to win this cup. So I'm going to assume now that team is going to be much more confident and stronger in the coming playoff sessions if the Panthers and the Hurricanes do meet up at some point. The Lightning are trying to find some way to have this last throws, have one last shot at trying to win a championship as well. So it still doesn't get any easier for the Panthers. And you've got this young Montreal team that is on the rise, and they got really deep, and they got a lot of valuable experience. You got this Buffalo Sabres team that is also young and found their way finally after all these years. So it's not going to be as easy once again for the Panthers, but hey, they're once again a big villain in the NHL because there's a lot of envy going on right now.
Yeah, and South Florida is the place to be for hockey. There, people want to go there. That's the great thing about this. And hey, you also need new energy in your locker room for guys who haven't won it before, as a way of just being inspired to go back up on the ice and try to win for that brother next to you. And literally, for in the case of Matthew Tkachuk, with his acquiring his brother.
The biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every match feels like it has the potential for a memorable moment. One goal can completely change the energy of a game, shift momentum, and alter the outcome in an instant. That's what makes tournament soccer so exciting, from the opening whistle to the final kick. Now FanDuel is giving fans another reason to stay locked into every match, with every goal pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. More goals mean more bonus bets. All you have to do is turn on your token. That's what I love about these tournaments. You can turn on a match between teams you don't normally follow, and suddenly one goal changes everything. The tension builds so quickly that you're invested before you even realize it. And now you get to benefit from each goal scored. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com now to get started. Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. Dusty May is making the jump from Michigan to the Dallas Mavericks. Isaiah Hull with Locked On Wolverine sorts through a shocking move.
Adam Schefter and Shams Charania report Dusty May is out. He is leaving for the NBA. So we're going to have an instant reaction up top, longer term in segment 2, and then we will touch on football recruiting as well. I'm just going to kind of looking at making sure that I'm not missing anything new here. So that's where we're at. Today's episode is brought to you by Odoo. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's ODOO.com/lockedon. All right, let's talk about the Dusty May of it all. 2 years in Ann Arbor, took an 8-24 team and made it a Sweet 16 team. National championship the following year. Heading to the Dallas Mavericks, according to Adam Schefter and Shams Charania. First off, I'm going to give a mea culpa, because I was like, everything I had heard in the last couple months, and I kind of just didn't even bother asking any questions or anything in the last, really kind of in the last month and a half, because I just been given every indication that Dusty May was not going anywhere. And I mean, I don't think that even if that anyone would really truly have any anyway at this point, but I was so confident he wasn't leaving Ann Arbor. And I don't think that anyone would have thought otherwise, given that he has been on something of a tour of Michigan, a media tour. He's been all around here, right? All of this, I wrote articles, he did an interview with Jeff Goodman of Field of 68 on Friday. I wrote articles off of that, talking about what's happening in the forthcoming, weeks, months, the plan for the season, all of that. And in some ways, this hurts more than John Beilein leaving, because Beilein at least had a really long run. It was surprising the timing when he left for the Cavaliers. I think that was in late May. Maybe that was early June. I'm trying to remember exactly when that was. Might have been mid-June. No, it had to have been earlier than that. I'm just remembering it was June when Juwan Howard was hired in 2019. But at least he had a little bit of had a bit of a track record, had a longer tenure, transformed the program in a sustaining way to the point where you could look at Juwan Howard now in retrospect and say, he was able to wring a little bit more than you would think, given how things ended. but like definitely like building on the foundation that John Beilein set. Whoever succeeds Dusty May, absolutely, and we'll get more into that in the next segment, but has a foundation set, but it's a 2-year tenure is somewhat fleeting to some degree. I mean, you can kind of almost even see that in football, even though Jim Harbaugh was around for a decade. Someone pointed out, and something that I was tagged, like Michigan coaches have been tending to leave after national championships because Harbaugh pieced out as well. I want to wait. I know a lot of people are going to place the blame at Ward Manuel's feet. We need to wait to find out more about what Dallas is offering. According to Adam Schefter, he really wanted to coach Cooper Flagg. But this is terrible for Michigan, right? Because like, are you going to be able to retain the roster that you just basically set up? Like there are some players that you look at and say like, well, I don't think Elliott Cadeau and Trey McKinney are going anywhere. But like, why wouldn't they? Right? They have the ability to go anywhere if they want now. Are you able to retain Brandon McCoy? Are you able to retain the transfers you just brought in? Mustafa Cham. It is terrible timing. I understand for the Mavericks, great timing because you bring them in before the draft. But for Michigan, like, this doesn't upend anything that happened. But like, I think that everyone thought, even last year, before you ever saw him come out and have a game, that the idea was this was your guy you were going to have for 10 years, 20 years. And to only have him for 2, despite how phenomenal things have been in the last 2 years for Michigan basketball, that really hurts a lot of what this is. Now, I don't think anyone's going to look back and say like, oh, I didn't, like it's wish he never would have come, obviously. And like no one's going to look back and have caveat emptor about this. But at the same time, like, what you thought you were getting, you got on the court, but you didn't think you were getting that legacy coach. And that's disheartening. That's really difficult to contend with. And it's made kind of the worse by the fact that he went around and has been like doing interviews with a bunch of different places and all of this. So now Michigan's going to have to reset at a really untimely period because you're going into July without a head coach. Now, I'm not going to get into like the options and things of that nature. I'm not well versed enough in college basketball, but even like Dusty was talking about, like, oh, well, it's going to be so great. We're going to be going up against Dan Hurley this fall. And, just everyone's been like right after the national championship. Everyone's feeling this idea of like, can we make it 2? I saw something on Twitter this morning about someone saying like, oh yeah, this like the foundation that's set and everything with Dusty May, like they could really challenge and contend for a second straight championship. And that was this morning. So it is absolutely wild. Again, mea culpa. Maybe it was arrogance on my part. He, to me, did not seem like the type of guy that was going to be like, I really need to go to the NBA. Felt more like a college coach because he's, like Beilein, he's a teacher. College coaches are more managers than teachers. They can be tacticians. Like Larry Brown was a tactician for sure, but not a teacher per se. So it's, I think with Dusty, he's more of a teacher than he is a tactician. He does have good scheme and everything, but like it's really shocking to me to think that he, especially to go to Dallas. Not that I know a ton about the NBA as it currently stands, but like Orlando to me would have made a bit more sense. But that's, again, I'm going off of limited information. You can correct me and say, no, Dallas is actually exactly where. Okay. I'm not going to argue that, but it just did not seem like exactly the place, the time. It's disheartening to see him leave Michigan high and dry at this stage. And welcome to college sports at this point, because again, as much as you can look at and say like, okay, Ward Manuel should have gotten this buttoned up, I took Dusty at his word that like, yeah, this is going to get signed in June or July. It's just a matter of everything getting buttoned up. But in today's world of college sports or pro sports, you can never, ever, ever take a coach on his word. And that's a lesson that we continue to learn almost daily. At least with Jim Harbaugh, it was pretty obvious. This is not that.
Jeffery Simmons is staying in Tennessee with the Titans after landing a massive new deal. Tyler Rowland with Locked On Titans lays out what it means after giving him a $105 million payday.
A historic contract for Jeffery Simmons. He gets 3 years, $105 million on an extension. $35 million per year on average makes it the biggest defensive tackle contract in NFL history. Jeffery Simmons 100% deserved this extension. He had 2 years left on his contract, but no guaranteed money remaining. In the NFL world, that's just not something that a player of Jeffery Simmons' caliber is going to tolerate. And luckily, it wasn't a question of tolerance or not, because the Tennessee Titans got this thing done in the perfect timing. So Simmons doesn't have to hold out of training camp, doesn't have to miss any practices then. And again, that's why I'm glad that this is out of the way, because it just eliminates any distractions, any drama, any problems. We'll talk about why that is part of the larger idea of what I want the Tennessee Titans summer break to be about. But to have this happen on the final day of the last week before that summer break kicks off, it just feels like the culmination of an entire offseason of great stuff for the Titans. We get the coaching change that we're excited about. We get the new jerseys. We get the player additions in free agency and in the draft that we're excited about. Very good mandatory minicamp, very good organized team activities with good attendance and no injuries and no drama. And we're just talking about football. And this is another thing that adds on to that. Again, a historic deal for Jeffery Simmons that was 100% earned, right? Jeffery Simmons sets his personal best last year, 11 sacks, goes over that coveted double-digit sack mark for an interior defensive lineman, and Simmons fulfilled the prophecy. He truly has become the best interior defensive lineman in the NFL. I remember when he first really broke onto the scene in 2020, 2021, had those back-to-back, or 2021, 2022, had those back-to-back all second team all-pro seasons where he really established himself as a top 5 player at the position. But Aaron Donald was still around, Chris Jones more in his prime. We were like, all right, Simmons is in the conversation, but he's definitely not ahead of those two guys. As we stand here today, he is finally truly in that number one position that we thought that he could ascend to. It took a little bit of time. He had to grow up, right? He matured his body. I forget who it was. Somebody posted a picture of Jeffery Simmons in his first press conference and then this last one that he did on Wednesday at mandatory minicamp. And it's just like, what he's done to make over his body. I've talked about his maturity level with some of the interviews he's done throughout this offseason, how he carries himself now. Remember, there were big-time risks about Jeffery Simmons. He was a top 5 talent in the NFL draft, but he had the incident, the violence incident. He had the ACL during training for the draft. Like, Jeffery Simmons was a big-time risk. And, a lot of players, when they get drafted, when there's risk on them, they say, oh, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to prove you right. The owner took a chance on me. Thank you so much. And Jeffery Simmons has truly done that tenfold. On the field, off the field, he's the best player that we could ask for on the field. He has turned into the best version of Jeffery Simmons. Not only that, but he is a consummate professional and a leader in the locker room. He's the face of the franchise, with Cam Ward hopefully taking that over. But Simmons has been the face of the franchise since Derrick Henry left. Like, it's no question about it. And he is the best player on the team, with no doubts, no questions. Again, the best defensive tackle in the entire NFL. And I think he's going to go to another level this year in this attacking defense that we talked about on Friday's episode, where I said Jeffery Simmons ain't leaving, and we went over his quotes. That's still a great listen, even now, knowing that the contract is done. But again, a historic deal that was totally earned for Jeffery Simmons. I'm glad this finally got done. But again, one thing that I think stands out to me is, although it's a historic contract for Jeffery Simmons, this is an absolute steal for the Tennessee Titans when you compare it to other defensive players in the NFL. Big Jeff gets a historic deal, $35 million per year, making him the highest paid defensive tackle in NFL history. Again, completely earned for Jeffery Simmons. Happy to get it out of the way, but an absolute steal for the Tennessee Titans. Before I tell you why, I do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. Again, it's your team every day. Speaking of every day, if you want to be a true Locked On Titans every dayer, you got to join the Locked On Titans Every Dayer Club. Hit the link down below in the description. You're going to get commercial-free versions of the podcast in your favorite podcast app. That's worth the price of admission alone right there. You're going to get added to a Locked On Titans group chat with me and a bunch of other everydayers where I'm giving you my immediate reaction to all the big news before I even go live, getting mailbag questions, chatting it up with you guys about everything Titans. Hit the link down below. Join the Locked On Titans Every Dayer Club now. But with that being said, again, this is an absolute steal. You start to look at some of the biggest contracts in the NFL on the defensive side of the ball. And you could argue maybe that some of these players are better than Jeffery Simmons. I mean, would you rather have Will Anderson, Micah Parsons, Aiden Hutchinson, Myles Garrett than Jeffery Simmons? What about TJ Watt, Danielle Hunter, Max Crosby, Nick Bosa? What about someone like that? See, for me personally, with where we're at right now, Nick Bosa's injuries concerns, I'd rather have Jeffery Simmons. Bosa's at $34 million per year. So Simmons just got $1 more million per year on average than Nick Bosa, and I think that's fair. Max Crosby, that would be a close one. Max Crosby's a very good player. Crosby's getting $35.5 million. I think that's completely fair. Danielle Hunter, excellent player. I'd rather have Jeffery Simmons, and Danielle Hunter's getting $41 million per year for TJ Watt. I know that TJ Watt is a household name, so this would sound like a hot take, but I would rather have Jeffery Simmons than TJ Watt right now. I think TJ Watt is still a good player, but he's not a top 5 defensive player in the entire NFL anymore, in my opinion. Myles Garrett, I'd rather have Myles Garrett. Aiden Hutchinson, $45 million a year for Aiden Hutchinson. He's a good player, maybe a touch overrated, in my opinion. I still think he's good, but I'd rather have Jeffery Simmons than Aiden Hutchinson. Now, Hutchinson's 25 years old, and Jeffery Simmons is 29. So that's why he's getting more money. Micah Parsons, even coming off the ACL, still give me Micah Parsons. Will Anderson, yeah, okay, you got me. 24-year-old Will Anderson, I'm taking that over 29-year-old Jeffery Simmons. But the point is, Big Jeff is right around Sauce Gardner, Trent McDuffie, Chris Jones, Nick Bosa, Max Crosby. $5 million less than Danielle Hunter. Like, if you stack up the best defensive players in the NFL, Simmons isn't more than 4, 5, 6. Like, and they're getting him at, 8, 9, 10 in terms of average per year. That's a steal for the Titans. I know Simmons is an older player, but defensive tackles and interior defensive linemen, offensive linemen tend to age gracefully in the NFL because it's not all about explosion and being out in space. You're in a phone booth. Technique, power, strength, understanding, leverage, those things can last. And it's not like Jeffery Simmons. I mean, Jeffery Simmons is a freak explosive athlete, but it's not like he's one of these twitched up edge rushers who's going to fall apart when he turns 30 and not have the burst to get it done anymore. That's not going to be the case. Jeffery Simmons is going to be able to overpower people and win with his technique in his hands on the interior for 5, 6 more years, I believe. So to get Simmons at this number, to get this done now, get it out of the way, and continue what I am calling the summer of boring for the Tennessee Titans. I want it to be the summer of boring. No drama, no news, no concerns, no injuries, nothing. Just quiet, peaceful work. Honestly, that's all we can hope for in any of our lives. Just quiet, peaceful work. It's what it's all about. But that's what I'm saying, and this is a great start towards that. Simmons getting a record deal. Vibes are high in the locker room. Everybody's happy. It's a good moment. People are celebrating. The picture the Titans posted, their social media team, with Jeff in the Boss Hog outfit like Taylor did back in the day with his big blue Titans blue truck. It's just The vibes are immaculate around the team right now. And if we can keep that, we don't need to make the momentum move forward. We don't got to, pull the rope more towards us and gain ground. If the Titans can just hold throughout the summer, just be in this holding pattern, we're going to be great, being quiet and boring, and then kicking off training camp healthy and hungry. So glad this got done. What a great Friday in America. The U.S. Open is going, USA soccer team, Big Jeff gets his extension. I mean, what three things could be more elite than that on a Friday in America in the summer? I mean, come on, man. But
welcome back to the Big Six in 60. Texas landed a huge commitment from five-star corner John Meredith III. Brad Kellner with Locked On Longhorns explains the pickup.
The Texas Longhorns just landed one of the biggest commitments of the Steve Sarkisian era. John Meredith III is a Longhorn, the number one cornerback in the country, the number 2 overall player in the class of 2027, a 5-star defensive back out of Fort Worth, North Crowley, just committed to Texas over Texas A&M and Alabama on national television, by the way. Those live commitments are a lot more fun when the player picks your team, right? This is huge. A national recruiting win for Texas, obviously a head-to-head recruiting win over Texas A&M to boot, and a statement for Steve Sarkisian, Will Muschamp, Mark Orfe, Chris Gilbert, and the entire Texas staff. Let's be very clear about what just happened. Texas did not land a good corner. They landed the top cornerback in America. All 5 stars are not created equal. Now, we never complain about any 5-star who chooses to play at Texas, but this guy is different. Again, the number 2 ranked player in the entire class. They call him the Jalen Ramsey of high school football. That'll work. This is a player who could have gone anywhere. Alabama wanted him. A&M wanted him badly. Ohio State had been in the mix. Miami was in the mix. Notre Dame was involved for a while. I mean, he had more than 40 offers from around the country, and he chose to play at Texas. Not that long ago, this recruitment did not necessarily feel like a slam dunk for the Longhorns. A&M had some real momentum in the spring. They got him on campus a few weeks ago. There were some Aggie folk feeling good about their chances, maybe thinking they had swayed him to end up in College Station. Again, other national powers were around too, but Texas is able to get the commit. And let's be honest, for a while, this 2027 class had felt a little stagnant. It wasn't bad. It wasn't falling apart, but it needed some juice. It needed momentum. It needed a run. And over the last couple of weeks, that is exactly what has happened for the Longhorns. Texas has stacked a number of blue chip commitments. This class has climbed, and it's now a top 10 class in the country. I mean, in the last 2 weeks alone, Texas has added in order Bryson Thrower, Jabarius Guerrer, a.k.a. Chicken, Kasai Curry, Brian Swanson, and now the cherry on top, John Meredith III. That is momentum right there. And Steve Sarkisian has owned the month of June since arriving in Austin. He's doing it again. January, February, March, April, May, Sark. It's what they should rename it. Now let's talk about John Meredith III a little more. And for those of you tuned in on YouTube, here's some highlights from his 2024 sophomore season. Couldn't find anything from this past year, but 2024 are the highlights that you're seeing right now. An outside corner, a true cover guy, a potential CB1 from the moment he steps foot on campus. Like, those players are hard to find. That's the type of upside we're talking about here with John Meredith III. 6'2", around 175 pounds, long arms, runs track, so he's got track speed, quick reaction ability, great recovery speed. He's comfortable in press. He's comfortable in off coverage. He can play man. He can play zone. He can run with receivers vertically. He can drive on throws underneath. He makes plays on the football. I mean, North Crowley asked him to do a little bit of everything this past year, and he does it all at a high level. That's what every defensive coordinator wants. He is, and you're seeing some of this if you're watching on YouTube, he's a physical corner, man. And he is a violent attacker in the run game. He'll come down in the screen game and dismantle blockers to get to the football. He's explosive too. I mean, he can close on the ball at an elite level. For a guy who's 6'2", having the closing speed that he has, that's rare. And that's why he's ranked where he is. Hard to come by guys with his combination of size, speed, length, and skill. I love this player, and I think he's a perfect fit for Muschamp's defense too. I don't think he'll have any problem pressing against bigger, more physical receivers, even in the SEC. Sometimes corners are scared of contact, scared to tackle, scared to get their nose in there. That's not John Meredith III, and you have to have guys like that at corner. And obviously having guys who can cover one-on-one matters a lot. I mean, this sport is so explosive now. Receivers are so good. Quarterbacks are too accurate. Offensive coordinators are too smart. They will try to isolate your corners. They will try to attack weak links on your defense. If you don't have guys who can hold up, well, that changes your entire defense. If you do have guys who can survive on an island, that opens up everything else for what a defensive coordinator wants to do in terms of bringing extra pressure, rotating coverage, helping somewhere else. That's the dream, getting a player like this, and that is why John Meredith III is such a big deal. He projects as that kind of player, and I think he can follow a team's best receiver too. I don't think he's a guy who needs to stay on one side of the field because, that's all he can cover and that's where he's comfortable. I think you can literally line him up anywhere, and he's going to make plays for you on defense. Is he perfect right now? No, nobody is. He's got to add some strength. He's got to develop technically a little more, but those are things that absolutely can be cleaned up. The traits are elite. The ceiling is elite. The profile is elite. And I will say this, interesting nugget here. Now, this doesn't affect his standing with Texas when he gets to the 40 acres, but I wanted to bring it up. John Meredith III might not be eligible to play for his senior year of high school football this fall. He didn't commit a crime or fail a bunch of classes or anything like that. He just transferred. Seriously. He transferred high schools from Euless Trinity to North Crowley, but the Texas UIL forbids players from transferring high schools due to athletic purposes. Like, you have to have a legitimate other reason to switch schools. It's not like the transfer portal in college football now where you go anywhere you want, anytime you want. There's nothing anybody can say about it. You got to have a legitimate other reason, and the UIL said he did. So he can appeal the ruling, which I'm sure he will, but this is kind of a big high school football story in the state of Texas. We'll see what happens there. He's still a stud, though. I mean, even if he can't play on Friday nights in the fall, he's done enough, and he's going to keep working on his game and honing his craft. And he hasn't just dominated local competition in high school on Friday nights. His best on best moments have backed it up. Sometimes you don't always get challenged in high school football, right? Sometimes teams will just try to avoid the number one corner on a team. So you've got to evaluate these type of recruits in camp settings and all-star settings and national settings, and Meredith has shown up there every single time. I like what this 2027 defensive back room is turning into for Texas. Remember, the Longhorns already have four-star safety Greedy James committed in this 27 cycle. Now you add John Meredith III. This takes the secondary to a completely different level. It's no longer just a nice start. This is the foundation of a potential elite defensive back class, and there's still some guys Texas is going after. Maybe some more good news coming up in the month of June that we'll talk about in a different episode. But this is a huge, huge win for Will Muschamp and Mark Orfe. I don't think you can overstate that. When Texas hired Will Muschamp a couple of moves ago, recruiting is important. And I love Pete Kwiatkowski. I will always appreciate the job that he did in Austin. But Coach Boone gives Texas so much more on the recruiting front, and we are already seeing that. The coaching well matters. Developing well matters. But going out and getting dudes, that matters too. And John Meredith III is an absolute dude, one of the best defensive recruits in the country, and the relationship piece was enormous here. Mark Orfe led this one. Will Muschamp heavily involved, Sark involved, Chris Gilbert involved, obviously Brandon Harris and the recruiting staff making things happen. Texas played the long game here. They made him feel wanted. They made him feel needed, and they showed him exactly how he would fit if he came to Austin, and it worked. I mean, anytime the Longhorns and Aggies are going head-to-head for an elite in-state player and you can win, it matters. And this is a big one because A&M's been recruiting at a ridiculously high level in this 27 cycle. I mean, they've been at the very top of the national class rankings for months now. They were viewed as a big threat here. They've been spending like crazy so far, and Texas still won. That is a statement right there. Best players in the state of Texas should come to Texas. Get to live in Austin, play in the SEC, compete for playoff spots, get developed. And, Ohio State and Georgia and Texas, those are the three schools who have had the most players drafted in the NFL over the last 3 years. It's a good thing. All of those are good things for Texas to pitch. And, John Meredith choosing Texas validates that pitch. I love it. Sark's on a run right now. Feels like he's on a 12-0 run in basketball, and I expect that run to continue because elite players recruit other elite players, and other people are going to pay attention to the fact that John Meredith just committed to the Longhorns, a top 2 recruit in the class. That is a big, big deal right there. So I'll say this, the recruitment does not end today. It's just how modern college football works. Everyone's going to keep calling. A&M's not going to disappear. Alabama's going to check in. Some other schools will reach out as well. That's a part of the deal. So Texas is going to have to recruit this thing to the whistle in December. But I will say this, from what I've heard, I don't think there's going to be as much drama in this one as maybe some of the other recruiting battles that Texas is in. Eastern Royal comes to mind there. But in saying that, you never want to stop. Texas isn't going to stop here. Obviously, for today, getting the commitment is huge. Having him in the class is huge. And if John Meredith III becomes the player that people think he can become, he's got NFL written all over him. The physical profile, the athletic profile, it's all there. The upside is enormous, too. This is production and potential and a monster commitment. And maybe the biggest defensive recruiting win in the Sark era. I said it at the top of the show, the highest rated recruit that Texas has landed since Arch Manning in that 2023 class. Huge day for Sark and Coach Muschamp and Coach Orfe and Texas recruiting in general. Big time addition. Great news on a Friday for the Longhorns, and it happened on national television too. A win over the Aggies and Bama on national TV. You will take that every single time.
Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. And that's true in sports just as it is in business. The Knicks acquired a bunch of pieces from different teams, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, and got everyone pulling in the same direction. It wasn't just one great player or coach. It was a coordinated effort across the entire organization that made it successful. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. The Wizards are on the clock at number 1 with AJ Debinsa and Darren Peterson in the draft debate. Ben Strober and Abdullah Ayubi with Locked On Wizards take you through it.
The Wizards still don't know who they're taking at 1. Man, Tuesday can't come sooner, Ben.
I know. That's why we got a lot to unpack on today's show. Later on in the program, we get into a report detailing that Cameron Boozer actually did visit Washington. So a lot of people, I think, are happy that this ended up happening. Is he completely out of the picture? We'll dive into that. Jeremy Woo had an update to his big board that was pretty interesting. We'll tackle that. AJ Debinsa actually didn't do a physical workout, he said on a podcast. Does it actually matter? Let's start here, though. Brian Windhorst said it best. The Wizards have held the cards very close to their chest throughout this entire process, AB, and nobody actually knows what will happen on Tuesday for certain. A lot of people have ideas of what it will be. They have said as much that it will be between Debinsa and Peterson, unless that's some kind of mega smokescreen to go grab Boozer. But nobody for certain knows who they are taking on Tuesday. But this is a sign of what a strong front office should be doing in this situation. Play the cards the right way. Make sure nobody knows what your next move is. And hopefully you're set up for excitement on Tuesday because it's a little bit unclear right now.
Yep, chess, not checkers. You should never show your hand. And if you want to be a respectable organization, these are the steps to get to that point. And I'm still Team AJ, Ben. You know it. But the Darren Peterson hype has been brewing here in Washington, and just watching Darren Peterson play, it seems so easy for the kid. When it comes to the question marks, though, there isn't any for AJ. there are some for Darren Pearson when it comes to availability and the whole creatine situation that happened in his freshman year. Cameron Boozer, in my opinion, is out of the picture. I know a lot of people are high on him. I know we had Nathan Grubel on. He's number 1 on their big board. But when it comes down to it, this number 1 pick is probably and not even probably, it is crucial. It is one of the most important days as a Wizards fan and in franchise history. Before today, it was the draft lottery. And now that you got number 1, this decision is going to be huge for decade plus years.
It has all of the implications of what can happen over the next decade or so of Wizards basketball. I think you're in a spot, though, with this top 3 between Boozer, Debonsa, Peterson, no particular order that I'm putting it there. AJ is the one that I would pick at this point in time, but any of these 3, if you get these guys, I feel like you are setting yourself up very, very well for the future. It'd be interesting to see the difference between taking these players and what it would mean for how you tool the roster around these players. Debonsa seems more or less like the guy where if you do select him first overall, maybe the roster is tooled a little bit more around his strengths at some point in time as a guy that's going to have the ball in his hands very often, attack, get downhill, be less of a threat from the outside. Maybe he develops that part of his game into a little bit more respectable shot from the outside, catch and shoot stuff. I think is the biggest weakness to his game right now. Peterson, if you just look at it in terms of drastic fit overall and what it would mean for the guys they have on the team right now, and I'm talking about Trae Young in the backcourt, and then all the guys you have in the wing between Bilal Coulibaly, Keyshawn George, and everybody else in between who's playing the 4 and the 5, AD for a point in time, Sarr at the 5 as well. I think it makes a little bit more sense in terms of what your roster is right now with Peterson, but we understand when you're drafting first overall, you're not drafting because you think he fits in the best. You're drafting the player that you think is the best right now and will have the highest ceiling going forward, and you project to be the best player 5 years from now. I like that you put that tweet out saying, who do you think is going to be the better player 5 years from now, AJ Debonsa or Darren Peterson? And it's a great debate, I think, honestly, because there's strong arguments for both these players. If you are somebody that is into developing around a guard and you have belief that Darren Peterson can play in a lead guard role, he can get some of the playmaking numbers back up to what they were in high school. Because a lot of people have been throwing around his high school tape, comparing it to his college tape, saying the athleticism doesn't look that much different when you're watching it from this. It's just a different game when you're going from high school to Division I, then to the NBA. So if playmaking is a concern and the Wizards don't believe that his playmaking numbers will be as good in the NBA and he doesn't have the strong lead guard upside, then maybe you value a guy like Debonsa as your top pick, because rim pressure is something that's going to be very important for the Wizards going forward in the future. And it just depends how much they value these type of things. But I think it's a really fascinating debate. Right now, I would probably put my money on AJ being a slightly better player in the future than Darren Peterson, but it could really go both ways. I think if Peterson avoids injury stuff throughout the first couple years of his career and wherever he plays, the fit works really well in terms of who he's playing in the backcourt with, and his three-point shot was as good as it was in his freshman season, he's going to hit very early in his career as well.
When we're defining better between AJ and DP, Ben, we're talking about impact on winning, I'm assuming, right?
That's a big part of it. Who is going to win you the most games? If you're talking about direct impact on winning going forward and how long it'll take, maybe adding Boozer to this team wins you more games early on in the process, but I don't know what the full upside will be if AJ is hitting the full peak of his powers, let's say 3 years, 4 years into his career. Because Boozer, for somebody at 18 years old, is extremely polished. And that's another thing where you look at fit and say, well, this dude fits in incredibly playing next to Sarr and everybody else. He's a guy that passes really well out of the low block, out of the high post. He can handle the basketball. He can do all of these things really well. So how does that elevate players around you? I think he's going to elevate people very early in his career. And I think when we had Dean Oliver, I said who was the most fast-tracked guy you could see morphing into their full potential. He said Boozer probably develops his game the fastest because it's a little bit more refined than some of these other guys early on. But the reason that you look maybe more closely at AJ and Darren is because you think of the potential that's yet untapped. I think AJ, a lot of that comes defensively. Some of that will come with the three-point shot. But just even his athleticism and his profile as a guy that gets downhill, there's room to grow for that, room to grow playing off the ball. It's really interesting having these conversations about upside for all these players, but we understand that Boozer's upside is a lot higher than people give it credit for, which is really interesting throughout this process as well.
talked about the player. I'm going to go through the marketing lens. Ben, AJ DeBonza is almost at 1 million followers on Instagram. Darren Peterson comparison's at 172K, at least when I checked this morning. I don't know how much Cameron Booster has, but it's just face of the league potential. AJ is right there. The name AJ, and you check off all those boxes, him alongside the rim pressure, his mid-range shot. I mean, Ben, it's hard to contest that shot, and he gets his spots at ease. There's a reason why experts are comparing him to likes of SGA, Tracy McGrady. The kid plays the game so slow at his size. I think he's almost 6'10", Ben. I saw a picture where he was at the Mystics game in New York, and he was standing next to Lauren Betts, who's 6'7". He looked at least 2 to 3 inches taller than her. So when you check off all those boxes, I know a lot of people love the guard era in the basketball right now. You saw what Jalen Brunson did. We have a small guard here, but when it comes down to winning basketball, is also affected by your wings. And when your wing group is Bilal Coulibaly, Keyshawn George, and now you have the potential of adding a guy like DeBonza, you're inevitably going to be go out there and win games. It's just about the development and his impact. And maybe he might have the best first year. I could see Cameron Boozer, Ben, winning Rookie of the Year. But when it comes down to it 4 to 5 years from now, when this team wants to be a contender, you'll see the development.
I wonder, of these teams in the top three, Washington, Utah, and Memphis, I think we could agree that Utah is probably set up for the quickest rise. I think based on what they have a a little bit more developed veteran stuff, and the Wizards are kind of banking on the health of Trae Young and Anthony Davis a little bit, depending on what happens with those two situations. But we presume that both of those guys will be on the roster for opening day and at least for half the season. If that's the case, then you could see the Wizards potentially being the best of those three teams. I think with what the Jazz have right now, they maybe have a little bit more of an edge based on what they have roster-wise, and that could have Peterson or whoever the second overall pick is end up winning more games in their rookie season. You're not picking AJ DeBonza or Darren Peterson because you're expecting this guy to be polished day one and winning the most games. I think if you understand where the expectations of this team should be, you understand they're trying to be better next season. They're trying to be more competitive, but the ultimate goal is not going to be winning a championship in your number one right here, especially with your first overall pick. They will still have to find a way to refine whoever the first overall pick's game is to be at a level that's good enough to be a number one option on a championship caliber team, and kind of graduating from these gradual steps taking forward. So I think you have to account that part of this process as well. The Wizards are probably going to be patient with whoever this first overall pick is in order to make sure when the time is right to become a contending team, that whoever they take is ready for that moment.
And that's how it should be, and I'm happy about that. Real quick before we go to break, happy Father's Day, Ben. AJ DeBonza posted on Twitter a picture of him and his dad, and I think that's the White House, Ben. And all the pictures he chosen a couple of days before draft night. You tell me, what does that mean?
Look, all the signals sent by both camps. Darren Peterson's dad keeps on reposting jersey swaps of Darren in Wizards gear, and I can't remember who he sent to, but AJ's dad was sending a Jazz shirt and a Wizard shirt to somebody. Someone said they saw Darren Peterson outside Memphis facility. I'm not sure if that's actually true. That's not an official report anywhere, so I'm not going to say that is so. But it is interesting to see what happens with all that stuff.
Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. The Hawks added Aaron Wiggins from Oklahoma City to boost their wing depth over the weekend. Brad Rowland with Locked On Hawks walks through the deal.
The Hawks have made a trade. Although it won't be official for a while, that's actually important to note. But as of Sunday evening, this is the following of what I know about this transaction is that Aaron Wiggins is coming from the Oklahoma City Thunder to the Atlanta Hawks in a trade with Atlanta in exchange for 2 second-round picks, one of which is the Hawks 2030 second-round pick, and then also the least favorable of the Hawks and Lakers second-round picks in 2032. That's a long time from now, obviously, but that 2032 pick projects to be pretty rough because it's actually the least favorable. And as a reminder, the Hawks acquired the 2032, I should say, second-round pick from the Lakers in the Luke Kennard trade only 5 months ago at this point in time. And that's actually the second part of the Luke Kennard synergy here, because Aaron Wiggins, who is a 6'6" wing from the Thunder, is coming over to the Hawks as part of the Luke Kennard trade exception. If you listen to the show already today, the McCollum episode, and also some of the Sour Cap stuff that I did earlier this summer, the biggest trade exception the Hawks have, aside from the mid-level, was that they have an $11 million exception created with the Kennard, Gabe Vincent trade back in February. Well, Wiggins is going to be going into that, so they don't have to use anything else. They can kind of just absorb him in, and for the price of those 2 second-round picks, including one of which will be pretty bad. Also, as part of this, I've been told pretty much right away by the Hawks side of things that the deal may not be official for quite some time. Essentially, there are, without going crazy nerdy on this, there are apron concerns and timing concerns, and it looks like, barring some changes, this won't be official until after the league's moratorium comes to an end in July. So that's like 2 weeks from now before the Hawks can actually announce this transaction. So I'm sure people will be wondering why it's not going to become official, and you won't see Aaron Wiggins on the roster officially, all this stuff. But wait a long time, but I have been double confirmed on this. The Hawks are trading for Aaron Wiggins. That's happening. Barring a weird physical or something like that, it's going to happen. It just may not be official for a couple of weeks because of some nerdy salary cap, CBA minutia. So number one is what Aaron Wiggins is: a productive two-way wing, not a star player by any means, definitely a role player, someone that I think is better off coming off the bench. But the Hawks needed bench help at the end of the last season, for sure. I think Aaron Wiggins is clearly better than someone like Corey Kispert, for example. Also a two-way option. He can defend, he can shoot. A prototypical role player that the Hawks could certainly use, and basically you cannot have too many two-way wing size players. He's more shooting guard size than small forward size in some respects, but also has played plenty of small forward in his career, can be a versatile option. And I think even in the last couple of minutes before I started recording this podcast, talking to folks in Oklahoma City who are around the team, who cover the team, invested in the team, everyone loves Aaron Wiggins from what I've heard. Good character guy, good community guy, and was also beloved on the floor, like gave them a nice weapon to go to. Didn't play a ton in the playoffs this year because the Thunder are famously incredibly deep, but on most teams, he would be like a 7th, 8th kind of guy. And given what he makes, that is a pretty appealing thing. So the other thing that I want to get into before I dive into the player himself is that Aaron Wiggins' contract is awesome. And that is definitely part of what the Hawks are doing here. It had to be small enough for this exact construction to work for it to fit in the Kennard trade exception. But Aaron Wiggins is going to make about $9 million for this coming season, 26-27. Then he'll be down to $8.2 million in 27-28. And then there's a team option in the 2028-29 season for another $8.2 million. So essentially he has a 2-1 contract, 2 guaranteed years, then a team option for very cheap. If you prefer this method, he's going to make less than 6% of his salary cap this year, and probably, if you believe the projections, less than 5% of the cap the next year. And then with a team option, and just to say this very plainly, if you have a team option, the team only picks it up if it's a good option, good contract to have. And Aaron Wiggins, as long as he's what he's been the last couple of years, is a steal at 4.5%, 5%, 6% of the cap. Again, not a star player, not going to change your life, not going to change the direction of the franchise. I'm not saying that, but at the price of basically a 2nd-round pick and a half, because the 2031 might be decent, but the least favorable of 2032, to get a legitimately rotation-level two-way wing making very little money is kind of a heist for the Hawks, honestly. And before I dive into the player, I'll just say the Hawks did a very good job here process-wise, which has been a theme of the Honest Soleil era, honestly. I'm not going to just say that because unless I believe it, and I do believe it. The Hawks saw, undoubtedly here, that the Thunder had a financial need to move someone like Wiggins. Without going crazy deep onto Locked On Thunder territory, the Thunder are extremely expensive, and the entire league knows they have to cut some money because they're going to have the biggest tax bill ever if they don't. And identified the Thunder earlier this summer, like on this podcast multiple times, as a potential trade team with the Hawks, and it's because of several factors. One of those was the draft. OKC has multiple picks. They could trade picks in the draft still. But that isn't why. There was also intrigue with Isaiah Hartenstein that I've certainly been a part of. But whether they move him or not, part of the deal was, and what I made sure to note on a previous podcast, is that 2 players, both Wiggins and Isaiah Joe, a more offense-leaning of the same archetype cheap contract wing, were poachable. And they would both fit in Atlanta on good contracts, fit in trade exceptions. And the Hawks, I think, identified that, realized, just like honestly they did a year ago with Porzingis. I know it didn't work out because Porzingis was never healthy. But also the very similar thing at a larger scale with KP, where they saw, hey, Boston's going to have to trade some guys. Let's see if we can get him at a good price. That happened here. So does that mean it's going to work out perfectly? Maybe not. But in a vacuum, and we'll get into the player in a second, the Hawks are getting a top 8 or 9 rotation player on a good team in Aaron Wiggins, And they're doing so for a very modest price. And they're doing so and keeping their salary cap sheet very clean and really bolstering a bench that just needed this. So obviously there is some level of uncertainty with all of their backup wing kind of players. I think Kuminga, there's uncertainty given the team option as I'm recording this Sunday night. Obviously that's uncertain. He could be back on the team. He could be traded. He could be declined. All that stuff is very much in play. Corey Kispert obviously is on a pretty rough contract. There's uncertainty because of that. They could trade him. Zachary Richer has uncertainty. I mean, I know the Hawks would love to have him get better in year 3, and I think I'm not giving up on him in the way that some Hawks fans are, but there is obviously uncertainty with his future in Atlanta compared to what it was a year or especially 2 years ago. With Wiggins, he's not going to, again, change your franchise, but he is a good player on a good contract who can do a lot of different things and fit into lineups different ways. He can be your defensive guy. He could be he's a pretty good shooter, all that stuff. So I think he would just bolsters the depth at a good price. And it's another example, at least to me, broadly speaking, of Monty Saleh making a good process decision, adding a player that makes sense, and also doing so while keeping his options. And he loves that term optionality, keeping his options open. Because honestly, if you look up in 6 months and they want to flip him for another contract, they can do that. Aaron Wiggins is, because he's so cheap, is a valuable trade piece.
That's all for today's Big 6 in 60. If you follow basketball, football, or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has a half hour on the biggest news in the NFL, the NBA, and on campus, going up every weekday just like this one. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA, the Big 3 in 30 NFL, or the Big 3 in 30 college, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 6 in 60.